Welcome back. So now, today, we're going to be getting into the fungi, or the fungal kingdom. So again, as I mentioned at the end of the last lecture, we're going to skip in your book over the next couple of chapters, which is 29 and 30. Don't worry, we're coming back to them after this lecture, and we're smashing in a few other chapters. Plant kingdom's pretty big. And by pretty big, I mean it's the biggest biomass-wise on Earth. So I thought it'd be easier if we start with fungi, because the fungi kingdom and the plant kingdom are very much symbiotic in a lot of ways. So it's important that these two are talked about together, but at the same time, I thought it'd be easier to talk about the fungi first and then get into the plant kingdom, which is probably going to be a two-parter lecture. Just like the animal kingdom is probably going to be a two-parter lecture, because there's a lot of stuff going on in both. Not to say there isn't a lot of stuff going on in archaea, bacteria, the protists, and fungi. There's quite a bit, but I'm not going to get into every little crazy detail in this course, unfortunately, or else I could be talking about this for hours, and I would. So, because there's so many crazy things. Also, I'm going to be making so many puns in this one. So we got a science joke coming in. It's a good groaner, too. Use it on your friends. All right, what room has no doors, no walls, no floor, and no ceiling? A mushroom! I'm looking at my husband to see if he reacted. He did not. Anyway. Alright, so the word fungus comes from the Latin word for mushrooms. In the past, we thought fungus was just another part of the plant kingdom. I mean, it's easy to think of that. You look at a fungus, you look at a plant, you can kind of be like, yeah, they must be related. And the ancient Greeks thought so too, so they just lumped them in there. However, they're not. They're actually more like animals than plants, even though fungi and plants and algae actually all have symbiosis with each other in a lot of cases. So the plant kingdom couldn't do what he could do later on when we talk about them without the fungi kingdom. So these guys definitely came together at some point and shook hands and said, for the good of both of us, let us become friends. Although not all fungi got that memo. If you've ever, unfortunately, got a fungal infection in your garden. That's fun. Anyway, so again, fungi are heterotrophic, just like the animal kingdom. They have filamentous bodies, not like the animal kingdom. They contain chitin instead, which is instead of cellulose. So plant walls are made of cellulose. Fungal cells have chitin for structure. Now, notice the spelling of this chitin. You're going to hear the word chitin again in the animal kingdom, but it is spelled differently with a K over there. And that's actually the protein that makes up a lot of, exoskeletons on the invertebrates, and later on down the road, some of the things on us as well. So chitin is, there are two words in biology that are said the same but spelled differently, and this is it. Because, why make it easy? So anyway, so fungal chitin is spelled with a CH. Invertebrate chitin is spelled with a K. So come with me on that one. But it's both said the same way. Once again, I didn't come up with this. This wasn't me. So don't shoot the messenger. So anyway, fungal exhibit nuclear mitosis, which means their nucleuses don't break down during mitosis. They undergo mitosis but just the surrounding cell. So it's interesting because a lot of fungals, they're multiple cells, but they really don't have any cell barriers between the cells. So they just look like a string, a really, 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 really strong, long string with multinuclei, and no distinction between cell to cell. So if you can imagine a mushroom in your head, and imagine that on a cellular level, it's just made out of a very long string of cells that you really can't tell where one cell begins and the other cell ends, other than there's a lot of nuclei. And that string is in the shape of a mushroom. Yeah, hopefully I didn't explode your brain there, but that's basically on a cellular level what a fungi looks like. So they have both asexual and sexual reproductive, but unlike plants who have some of these, they do not have seeds. They have spores. And if you've ever played with puffball mushrooms, you know this, because I know I did as a kid and as an adult. You hit the puffball mushrooms and you go, especially in the fall, and what that puff comes out, that's all the spores. So you're just spreading them around. So fungi are fun like that. So they do not have seeds, they have spores. They are kind of hard to cultivate. That's why we don't exactly have a giant mushroom farming, communities like we do, with crops and whatnot. We still have them. But cultivating mushrooms for consumption, because I'm crazy. I'm just going to warn you about this. I'm crazy. I like mushroom pizza. I love mushrooms on my pizzas. I think that is the most delicious thing ever. I know you're all probably sitting over there going, you unnatural woman. But it's true. I love mushrooms on my pizza. But they just, it's hard to get them to grow a lot of times. And there's actually caves underground that have been turned into mushroom farms. There's some people that take old books and turn them into little mushroom growers. There's kits you can buy now. But there's not a lot of fungus that cultivates easily. So sometimes you just have to go out and find them. And we'll talk about those later. So there's two main parts of a mushroom. There is the hyphae, which are these slender filaments that all fungi except yeast molds have, kind of like a water balloon with a hardened exterior. So these are the hyphae right here. And then they have the mycelium. So when hyphae grow and branch out, they'll turn into these tangled messes right here. And those would be the mycelium. Then spores are just haploid cells that undergo mitosis to form a multicellular haploid individuals. And usually what we see is the mushroom itself is actually neither the hyphae or the mycelium. It is actually the fruiting body. So a lot of mushrooms that we see, we're looking at the fruiting body. And a lot of the mushroom is actually underground. This is actually how we get fairy rings. If you don't know what a fairy ring is, basically it's a ring of mushrooms. And usually that fairy ring is actually one mushroom. It's not several. The fruiting bodies we see in the ring itself are just the fruiting bodies. They're the ones that release the spores eventually. But underground, it's literally that mushroom has grown into a big circle and have shot their mycelium up to grow into, the fruiting bodies. And that is actually so when you go and find a fairy ring, or a big circular mushroom, that's literally one mushroom. That what you see above is a fraction of what's actually under the dirt. So a lot of mushrooms, we just see the fruiting bodies. Underground, that's where the hyphae and the mycelium hang out. So again, if we look at the hyphae, you can kind of figure out who's who. So there's two types of hyphae, and it depends on their filaments. So we've got septate hyphae, which are divided into cells, and they contain pores in between these cell walls, so that way there can be flowing. And you can see it, the septate hyphae, they definitely look like a whole bunch of cells hanging out together in a line. However, there's also, as I said earlier, the non-septate hypha, where it's basically when the cell wall is continuous and you don't see any septa, that's what the separations are called, between them. And this allows very quick nutrient flow. So not as quick nutrient flow, very quick nutrient flow. And that's a major difference between the structure of the hyphae on these guys. Now, some of these guys have really, 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 really specialized hyphae called haustoria, which allows them to actually penetrate the tissues of their host and extract nutrients. And this can come in two flavors. Where they're a symbiote, and everything is good and golden, and this is usually between the fungus and plant roots. This is actually how plants get minerals from the ground, because plants can't do it on their own. So they literally have fungus that has engaged in a symbiotic relationship with that plant. 95% of all plants have this relationship with fungi. And basically the haustorium go into the cell membrane, and in a good, if it's a good symbiosis, basically there is These guys are giving up minerals and everything that they're decomposing out of the dirt where the roots are and giving that to them. And the plant cells are giving back sugars and anything else that the fungus needs. So again, it's a, hey, I can get these minerals out of the dirt for you and hand it over to you to grow, and you cut me in on that sweet, photosynthesis you got going and making all that sugar, because I know you got a ton. And the plant goes, yeah. And that's actually how plants went from really teeny tiny plants to huge trees, because between this symbiosis, like I said, 95% of all plants have this symbiosis with fungi in this form or fashion. So this is happy. This is good. This is the plant kingdom and the fungi kingdom coming together in brotherhood and love, so that way both can flourish and do their thing. However, some of these guys use their haustoria for violence. And like for this one right here, this is a nematode. They're a type of roundworm. We're going to talk about them later. They can be good or bad too. Nematodes are everywhere, including in, we found one species that only lives in the little wooden coasters in German pubs. I'm not kidding you. I wish I made that up, but it's true. We found a species just living in the coasters. The coasters under beer mugs in German pubs. Nowhere else. But anyway, getting back to the fungi. This is a fungi that has entrapped one and now is using their haustoria to basically suck this guy dead. Suck him dry. So he can constrict around a nematode in less than a second, and then his haustoria burrows in and he just goes like a vampire. So again, this is good, and this can also be bad. So that haustoria can be really, really good, especially with the plants, or it can be like little vampires. So now, mycorrhiza, these guys, again, there's two types of mycorrhizal fungi. Again, so there's the endomycorrhizal fungi, also known as the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, and these guys are the ones that form that symbiotic relationship with approximately 85% of the plants. And you'd go, wait, you said 95%. Wait for it. There's another flavor. And these guys pair commercially produced plants, green, leafy, fruiting, flowering plants. So again, when we talk about the four different groups in the plant kingdom, yeah, these are the friends to the, the word just flew right out of my mind. Goodbye. Come back. The flowering plants. Get back here. Watch, I'll figure it out later. Anyway, so they penetrate into the root cortex. They form nutrient exchanges. They're called, with the roots, which is called arbustles, which is the specialized hyphae that exchange nutrients with living plant cells. So again, and mycorrhizae means fungus roots. So that's literally what it means. Ectomycorrhizal fungi, again, these form relationship with about 10% of the plants. Mainly with conifers and American hardwoods. They do not penetrate. So endomycorrhizal, remember endo means inside, so these guys go inside. Ectomycorrhizal, they are not going inside, so ecto means outside. These guys do not penetrate, but they make this net that's around it. So they basically wrap around. And again, they form the sheath around the root for the nutrient exchange, and it's known as a Hartrig net. Probably named after the dude that found it. Anyway. So there's other ones that are actually the Brassica family is non-mycorrhizal. And there's even one that has orchids have specific species of mycorrhizal fungi. And if you don't take care of that specific species, you've got dead orchids. That's why sometimes raising orchids is very, very specialized. Again, you're not dealing with one kingdom, you're dealing with two kingdoms working in relationship with each other. So these are the two major types of mycorrhizal fungi, the endo, or known as the arbuscular because of the arbuscles, or the ectomycorrhizal. And again, that makes up 95% of the plant species that gets a fungi friend to help him, suck in minerals and nutrients that they couldn't otherwise get. And it works out, everybody's happy. everybody's happy. So anyway, most fungi procreate themselves through a ton of spores, both sexually and asexually. Again, we kind of have a figure 8 life cycle going on here. We've got the asexual side and the sexual side. You're going to kind of see this again when you hit plant kingdom, sort of. They do it in a big circle, but we've got a figure 8 thing going here in the fungi. So if from the mycelium, they can hit each other and go through mitosis. They put out a whole bunch of spores. That hits and germinates into mycelium. Again, they're only running with, one copy, but if you want double copy, some of these guys are interesting because they go through something called plasmagamy, which is 2 haploid cells from 2 different mycelia. So like there's one here and then another one from another mushroom over here, and they grow close to each other, and sometimes they'll merge and they form what's known as a heterokaryotic cell with 2 nuclei, and those 2 nuclei actually fuse into a diploid form. So that's called karyogamy. And that zygote then goes through meiosis and then pumps out a bunch of spores. So again, we're not really getting away from the spores here. So a lot of fungi have an asexual side and a sexual side. However, there's an old term, these guys are kind of debunked, but they still don't. There are some fungi that do not have any sexual reproduction whatsoever. They're completely asexual, and they're called deuteromycetes. But these guys, that's an old term. So even though I'm putting it in, it's kind of an outdated term. So if you find an old book that's talking about deuteromycetes, yeah, they're actually, it's an old outdated term. It used to be a group. It is now no longer a group. So they used to be one of the these guys, the deuteromycetes, but now they're not. So none for you. So they got dropped. So that's an old term, but they're just completely asexual. And yes, you'll probably have one question on that. Anyway, now we split them up based on how they reproduce. So again, we've got the Bastidiomycota, they're club fungi. We've got the Asciomycota, the sac fungi, which if you've ever eaten Thinking. Now I can't. Truffles. There you go. Boop. That's those guys. The Glomeromycota, which is the arbuscular fungi. Again, these are the guys found in 85% of plant roots. The Zygomycota, which is the zygote fungi. And the chytrids, which are weird. So anyway, not that fungi isn't weird. They're kind of interesting. So again, depending on what's going on, you can also see how these guys have split, depending on if they have, spores that basically turn into mobile or no mobile. They're split by that, depending on time. So you can see they started with mobile, and then over time, another group broke away, and they do not. So it's kind of interesting there, how we get all these different groups. So again, we're going to run over these real quick. The Zygomycota, they have sexual spores and hyphae that have no walls. So again, if you go back to, this, they have the non-setate hypha. Examples of this are black bread molds. If you've ever, unfortunately, left your bread in the back of the refrigerator for too long, pulled it out, went, or left it up on top of the refrigerator for too long and went, yeah, you just met a Zygomycota. Asciomycota, again, they have sexual spores. Most yeasts reproduce asexually. Hyphae are divided by walls, so they've got the septa. Again, we like these guys. Morels, truffles, yeasts, and cup fungi. Yeasts help us make, bread and beer and whatnot, so we do enjoy them. We like them very much. Bastidiomycota, these have sexual spores, and the hyphae have walls, so you'll see the seta. Again, mushrooms, puffballs, rusts, and smuts. I did not name these. So again, we've got some edible guys between these guys. Unfortunately, some of them also don't eat or you're dead, which is why you should not go outside with a book and go, hey, I think I can eat that, because usually that's how a lot of people end up dead. Anyway, Trichomycodia, which is basically retain the flagella in both the male and the female gametes. These are mostly in aquatic environments. They're parasitic on plants, insects, and amphibians. I've got a video down the line that I'm going to recommend, but this is the one that kind of brings up the video game and the TV show The Last of Us, because these are the ones that will take over insects and other creatures to turn them into zombies and make them do their will. So they're little freaks. They're freaky foo. So glomeromycota. So these are the asexual that can only live in plant roots. So these are the arbuscular mycorrhiza or the endomycorrhiza. So again, you can see the arbuscules here and the root and the hyphae around it. So these are buddies with the plant kingdom. And again, we love them for it, because there wouldn't be much of a plant kingdom without these guys being buddy with the plant kingdom. So the plant kingdom should thank them too, but the plant kingdom is too busy living with them, so I guess. Anyway, again, there's always that weirdo group. And this is the asexual Ascomycota and Bastidiomycota, which are called imperfect fungi. They used to be called the Deuteromycota, as I mentioned earlier, but that term is no longer used. We still kind of use it to say something's just asexual only fungi, but it's kind of a dead term. It's fishing its way out of this. It was, like I said, at one point it was instead of the 5 groups, it was 6 groups, and then this got dumped because we rearranged, and because Ascidiomycota and Bastidiomycota can both have ones that are completely asexual, and they're known as imperfect fungi because they do not have a sexual side to their life cycle. So anyway, so most of these live on land with a very few aquatic exceptions. The form is visible mycelial with a fuzzy appearance. We know it as mold. We don't like it. A lot of us are allergic to mold, so you can sit there now and go, if you find a mold and you go yell at it and go, "You're an imperfect fungi, how dare you? You don't have a sexual reproductive cycle." And I'm sure the mold will be very sad and stop doing mold things, except that they don't. So. I had an ex-boyfriend that his bathroom was made of nothing but mold. Ugh. Anyway, there's a reason why he was an ex. Anyway, so some fungi exist in symbiotic relationships with algae and plants. We already discussed mycorrhizae like crazy. So again, mycorrhiza is basically when the plant kingdom and the fungi kingdom said, let's be bros and help each other. Lichens, on the other hand, is basically when a fungus and an algae get together, or a fungus and a cyanobacteria, can be either. We see these guys on the side of rocks. A lot of people think they're moss. They're not. It's a lichen. You'll see them on the sides of trees. Those are lichens. And that's a fungus and an algae living together as one. They're both, if you look at them under a microscope, you'll see they're separate creatures, but, they live together as one, like the mycorrhiza between the plant kingdoms and the fungi kingdom, hanging out together and being awesome. So again, the fungus provides the minerals the algae cannot otherwise get. The algae gives the fungus food. Also, the fungus helps protect the algae. So again, lichens, you've seen them on trees. You've seen them on rocks. They are our friends. We like them very much. Do I have a picture of them? I hope I had a picture of them coming up. Anyway, so, yeah, you'll see them, the big, swirly round patterns on a tree. Yeah, that's a lichen. Or on a rock. They're all over the place here. All over the place here. Yeah, every time I bring my students out to do the moss lab, which you are going to be doing soon, a lot of people go and try to grab lichen. And I'm like, no. That's a lichen, not a moss. So, anyway, again, good or bad, let's talk about it. Food. We eat fungi, but fungi, mushrooms figure prominently in the human diet. Morels, shiitake mushrooms, chanterelles, truffles are considered delicacies. There's one around here. It's called chicken of the woods. If you've ever had chicken of the woods, it literally tastes like chicken. And what you do is you find it. It's bright orange. Don't find it just based on my description. Please go with somebody who knows. But if you've had chicken of the woods, It's really good. You just bring it home. You put some garlic in there, and you put some butter in there, and you just saute that sucker up. It's good stuff. So we've got edibles around here, and I don't mean the ones that make you see things. I mean, like, you can just eat it. Although, unfortunately, we also have death angels around here. So please know your mushroom, or go out with somebody who does know it. Chicken to the Woods is really good. They usually pop up in the fall. Truffles are major. I used to have a professor that would give you an A on your final if you could bring him a truffle. He was interesting. Anyway, if you like blue cheese, congratulations. That's a mold of the genus Penicillium. It ripens many cheeses. They originate in natural environments like the caves from France. My French is so bad. Roquefort. So anyway, and they basically put wheels of sheep milk cheese in there stacked, and then the mold that literally lives in that cave goes into the cheese and makes those blue veins, and then you get stinky blue cheese. Good for you. My entire family loves blue cheese. I do not. Not a fan. So, just saying. So, we do eat mold. It is funny to walk over and say, hey, I can eat that. So we have blue mold in our cheese. Yum, yum. So again, we have, like I said, even underground caves. There in Chicago, there's actually a lot of mushroom farms because they're actually in caves that used to be speakeasies down below street level. And it's a good place because it's dark, humid, and some of the mushrooms just love that. So now, fermentation. Grains produce beer, fruits, and produce wine. This is basically the oldest thing we've figured out how to do. Between bread and beer, that was the beginning of civilization right there. And wild yeasts came from the environment. There's even yeasts that came from our own spit. There's a type of beer down in Mexico, or at least before it was Mexico. So again, you can even buy isolated strains to create alcohol. So you can do different winemaking regions. Louis Pasteur, again, we've talked about him quite a few times by now. He was instrumental in developing a reliable strain of brewer's yeast. So the brewer's yeast, if you like to make your own beer or wine, which I've had several people, do, it's these guys. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, basically the French brewing industry in the 1850s. He made that one. Well, he didn't make it, but he basically made it so it's stable and you can buy it off the shelf. This was one of the first examples of biotechnology patenting because he was like, I'm going to put my name on this and that way everybody knows I made it. So it's a very interesting. So we have fungus among us, and a lot of times we do love them funguses, especially to make bread and beer and food and put them on your pizzas, or at least put them on my pizzas. However, fungi also like our crops just as much as we do, which is, and we have to usually get fungicides to stave them off, like smuts, rusts, powdery or downy mildew are examples of common fungal pathogens that beat up our crops. And if you're in the farming industry in any form or fashion, you probably know this more than I do. And the problem with killing off fungi is the fact that they are eukaryotic cells. So if I hadn't mentioned this before, they are eukaryotic cells, just like us, just like plants. And this is why we can't use antibiotics with them, because unfortunately, antibiotics actually came from fungus. Penicillium is a fungal chemical that's put out by fungus. That's actually how we came up with it, because we saw that it killed off the bacteria on petri dishes. And therefore, we said, hey, the fungus is making this chemical that kills bacteria. However, the problem is, fungi being eukaryotes, we die to the same things. So whatever kills a fungus will kill a human, will kill a plant. Because we're all eukaryotes, which is really hard when the fungi infects a human. And I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute of what happens when fungi get into humans, which is not fun. And they are a pain in the butt. if not more. So mycosis is a fungal disease that results from an infection or direct damage due to the growth and infiltration of the fungus. Fungi attacks usually directly by colonizing and destroying tissues. They also put out chemicals while they're eating you and breaking you down, which is mycotoxicosis, the poisoning of humans and other animals by foods contaminated by fungal toxins from literally the waste products of them breaking you down. So not only is it killing you by breaking you down, it's also putting out chemicals as it's putting you down. They'll put you down more. Yay. And to get rid of it, unfortunately, whatever kills a fungus kills human cells just as much. And that's why treating them and trying to get them out of a human system is nigh on impossible. It's really hard to bounce back from fungal infections. We're having major issues with white nose disease in our bats in this area. If we lose our bats, that would be really bad, because they are a lot of our pest control. And so we'll get into bats later. They're just cool. Mycetism is basically describes the ingestion of toxins and poisonous mushrooms. So, unfortunately, there's people that love to eat mushrooms, and sometimes they shouldn't. So, and sometimes they're the ones that get you really high, then kill you. Anyway, so examples of this are ringworm. Ringworm is actually a fungus, not anything else. Athlete's foot is one, and white nose disease in bats, and valley fever. Valley fever is another one. The fungi particles getting in a person's lungs. White nose disease is currently decimating our bats in this area, as I just said, which is really sad because we need our bats. I actually got to catch and tag and measure bats during my training, and it was really fun. And they're so soft. Bats are so soft. I mean, even if you've touched a chinchilla, bats are softer than that. They're just so cute. Unfortunately, when they get inside of us, it's not good. Like I said, it is really, 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 really hard to get them out because they're eukaryotic cells, and whatever kills a eukaryotic cell kills us too, because we are also eukaryotic cells, which is so here's some major ones. Aspergillus, basically the spores that spread in the air and can threaten the lung health of people with compromised immune systems. Candida auris, which basically grows on yeast, leads to severe, sometimes deadly infections. Mortality rate can spread very quickly in healthcare settings, can be as high as 60%. This is the one that basically goes in and kills patients with HIV/AIDS. This kills, 180,000 people annually. Cryptococcus neformans. And then Candida albinicans, which is basically commonly found in the gut, and can invasive infections, especially in immunocompromised people, cause asthma-like illness, pulmonary fibrosis, and non-cancerous tumors. So again, right here, this is white nose syndrome in bats, which is just, like I said, is absolutely devastating our bats in this area. And it's sad because we need to do something about that. If we lose our bats, we're losing pollinators, we're losing pest control. People would get all freaky. The bats, they carry rabies. Actually, only one species of bat in North Carolina can carry it, and most of the time they don't. Our bats around here are very special and a very important part of our ecology here in North Carolina. So it's really disturbing that we're losing people to take care of the white nose issue in bats in our colonies. We need to do something about that. This is oral candidiasis. So basically Candida albicans is this is what happens. Yum yum, that's a tongue. So this is disease in insects. It takes them over and makes them do crazy things. We'll talk about that in a minute. However, there's another one where it gets on corn, and interestingly enough, it actually turns into truffles on corn, and then people eat that as a delicacy. So sometimes if your corn gets infected by fungus, it makes hummus. Here's another one. Look at that. That's a fungus in somebody's leg. This is a fungus in somebody's foot and arm. Mycetoma. Ooh. So, sorry if I gave you nightmares. Anyway, so Amoeba sisters have a really good one on fungi. We're not gonna, no. Again, our boy Hank, He'll tell us about the fungi.
Hello and welcome to the Wonder...
You get to watch it on your own. Again, true facts. I'll put this one up as well, but I'm giving you a little bit of a warning. If you don't want to see insects taken over by fungus in creepy ways, I wouldn't watch this one. If you are like me and you want to watch it, do it. This one shows 2 where it takes over fruit flies and an ant. He shows 2. There's more. There are so many more. But anyway, yeah, if you thought The Last of Us, the video game and or the show was, oh, no, mushrooms can't. Yeah, they can. Yeah. So, one day, we all might be controlled by fungi. Or maybe we already are, we just don't know it. Anyway, and if so, they could fix a few things. But anyway, true facts, again, watch out, swear words, but also lots of humor, and in this case, lots of pictures of insects being taken over bodily and brainily by fungi, making them do things. Oh yeah, and cicadas too, he goes into cicadas. So anyway, highly recommend. Great video. Lots of fun.
This episode is sponsored by Brilliant.
That was the last one. All right, and there you go. And there you go. There's fungi in a nutshell, or a fungi group. And next time, we're going to go back 2 chapters to chapter 29, 30, and then we're going to smash in a couple other chapters there, here and there. So we're going to be covering 4 chapters and 2 lectures for the plant kingdom, because that's a big group. Even though we break it down into 4 groups, or 4 phyla, it's still pretty hefty to talk about, because I have a lot of different things going on, a lot of moving parts, even though the tree just sits there. And then we'll be going into 2 lectures for the animal kingdom, bam bam, for invertebrates and then vertebrates. And then we'll be moving into ecology. And after going over some ecology, we'll pretty much be done. So with that said, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next lecture when we talk about plants.